Hello and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Erica with Memory Box Candle Co. And I make videos all about the journey of starting a candle business. In today's video, we are diving into the topic mainly for those of you that are getting started in the testing process of candle making. And I really want to go over something that I think will be really helpful for you when you're getting started, because it can be really confusing with all of the different kind of supplies that there are out there on where to get started with testing. So how to know how to pick your testing materials and how do you even know where to start. So that's what we're going to dive into in today's video. So the first thing that I recommend before you get into trying to figure out what wick size, wick series, fragrance oil percentage, all this kind of stuff that goes into candle making, before you figure out those, I want you to choose your wax and your vessel that you're going to be making your candle in. Those two things are going to be kind of the more important things that are going to be a little bit more concrete. No pun intended if you're choosing concrete jars. But those things are going to be something that are going to be harder to change up. It's easier to change up your wicks and your fragrance oil percentage in the testing process than it is to constantly be switching out vessels or switching out your wax. So I really recommend that you choose a wax, and let's say you have kind of played around with candle making before and you found that, let's say you really like coconut 83 over anything else, so you choose that wax to make your candles out of, and then you have to also choose the container, the jar that you're going to be making your candles out of as well. So whatever container that you have found that you really like making candles out of for one reason or another, and now you want to get a little bit more serious and start the testing process to create the best performing and safest candle that you possibly can. So that is where we are going to get into trying to figure out where to go from there. So make sure that you have chosen your wax and your vessel, whatever that is that you want to work with, and then you can start trying to figure out, how do I go about figuring out the wicks, sizes, series of wicks, all that kind of stuff that comes into play. So the way that I recommend going about this is go on to the supplier's website where you purchased your materials, specifically more of the vessels that you purchased from. So if you, let's say, are purchasing from multiple different suppliers, you purchase your wax from one supplier, you purchase your jars from a different supplier, I would probably start with the supplier that you get your jars from. And most candle suppliers offer information in regards to wick testing, the sizes of wicks and the series of wicks that they recommend. And I do want to stress that this is just a starting point. So this is just where you get started, because I think what can be very confusing is there are tons of different places and forums and groups and things that are talking about all these different kinds of wicks and sizes, and you don't even know where to start. So this is going to be your starting point. So start with the supplier website where you purchase your jars from. If you are purchasing from, let's say, Amazon, and they give zero information about candle making, what I recommend that you do is, let's say you're working with the 9-ounce straight-sided jars that I recently started using, and I actually get those jars on Amazon. What I would do is I would do a quick Google search, and I would see if I can find those jars at an actual candle supplier. Click on that website and see if they give you any information on where to get started in terms of choosing a wick. I'm going to use California Candle Supply as an example for this video of one of the jars that we've been using since pretty much the very beginning. So it is the 13.5 ounce matte black Cali jars we use. And down here, it actually gives you more information about the jar itself. So the diameter is about 3.25 inches. So the whole diameter is 3.5 inches, but the inner diameter is what matters, because this is going to be the inner diameter of where the melt pool is going to be. So that matters more than the very edge to the very edge, because glass is usually a little bit thick. So as you can see, the whole diameter is 3.5 inches, but the inner diameter is 3.25 inch. So that's really what matters there. It gives the height, it gives the bottom diameter, it gives, the thickness right there. And then right over here, California Candle Supply gives wick recommendations. So depending on the wax that you are working with, it gives recommendations. Now, this is based on the wax that they carry, and you may find that depending on the supplier's website that you're looking on, is they may only specify based on the waxes that they personally carry. But again, it's just a starting point. So let's say you're working with a soy wax. You may want to maybe look at soy 10 and see what the recommendations are, even if it's not soy 10 that you're working with, but you are working with a soy, let's say a soy paraffin blend, or something like that, that you're working with a different supplier, is you are able to go and actually look at the recommendations. Now, what I would recommend, and I know there's a lot of me saying the word recommend in here, but again, it's just a starting point. So for instance, I actually found in my own personal testing process that the Eco 1 and Eco 2s, double wicking those in this jar, yielded a candle that burned too hot for my liking. So I switched things up, I did more testing, and I found out that the CDN series wicks burn cooler than the Eco wicks. So I decided to switch over to those and double wick two CDN2s, and that seemed to work well with an additional beeswax blend that we add into our soy 10 candles. So obviously that is an additional step, and that really just comes after the testing process. This is again just a starting point, because you're going to learn a lot when you're going through the testing process, especially if you try out different wicks and realize that there's some wicks that will burn hotter than others and some wicks that will burn cooler than others. And that's just something that you will learn throughout your testing process. But again, just a starting point. Another example would be on Candle Science. They do carry the 9-ounce straight-sided jars on Candle Science. And they actually have an entire wick guide. So it's not showing the information on here. You would just go to the wick guide and put in the information that they give in terms of the diameter and the kind of wax that you are working with. So when you're choosing a wick, it's really just a matter of that diameter of the container that you're working with, as well as the wax blend and how that all works together with the size wick that you're working with. And then again, when you are trying to choose a wick size, if you find, let's say that you're in kind of that almost 3 inches to 3¼ inch vessel that you're working with, it is a very difficult size vessel to wick, because you may find that when you are trying to wick up in a single wick, it's either not giving you a full melt pool, or the flame gets too high and you're just not very happy with it. But if you double wick, it may actually burn too hot. So it's kind of this weird size that can be very challenging, which is why we decided to add beeswax to our soy 10 blend to kind of bring up the total melt point of the wax, to help cool down and slow down that burn time so that double wicking would work well. But if you are, let's say, getting started with the testing process and you're working with a single wick and you find yourself wanting to double wick, always double wick the smallest size in whatever series that you're working with. So I did do an entire video on double wicking if you're interested in that, but a big mistake that I see a lot of new makers make is that if they're looking at the wicking suggestion on here and the wick guide gives them a certain size wick. So let me just choose something right here. So this right here. So for instance, if you find that you want to double wick this combination right here, do not double wick 2 CDN 18s or 2 Eco 14s. It is going to burn way too hot. You would want to take this down and do 2 CD2s or 2 Eco 1s, because those are the smallest wicks in that series, and then you can adjust from there if you need to wick up just a little bit on both of those, depending on how wide that diameter of the vessel that you're working with is. But you never want to double wick the single wick size in any container, because again, it's going to burn way too hot. But I really hope that this helped those of you that are getting started in candle making kind of have a place to start, because again, I know it can be really confusing with so many supplies that are out there and you're looking at everything and you're like, I don't even know what combination to start with, always start with the supplier and what they recommend. They may also have instructions on how to actually make the candles with those supplies, and you can just use that as a starting point. So for instance, I think for soy 10 on here for the actual wax itself, there's instructions on how to make candles with that. And Chris and I actually work with temperatures that are hotter than what they're recommending because we found that that works best for the candles that we are working with and the candles that we make, but their temperatures are slightly lower than what we would recommend. It doesn't necessarily mean that making candles with their recommendations is wrong. It's just we have adjusted it over time and we do it slightly different. And you may find that over time that you're not trying to follow these concrete instructions from these suppliers, that it's merely just kind of a starting point. And then throughout your testing process, you can see what's going to work best for you and your candles. But with that, if you enjoyed today's video, please go ahead and give this video a big thumbs up. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions in regards to this, in regards to starting out. I know I always get a lot of specific questions of people saying, hey, I'm using this. What wick size should I use with this? And I really hope that this video helps you kind of get a starting point so you can kind of get that information, because again, I haven't done all of the different testing with waxes and wicks and all that. If you want to see more of that, I would suggest going over to Wade's channel, which is Black Tie Barn. Also Jeff Stanley, they've done a lot more of the testing and the candle making side of things. I tend to fall more towards the actual like candle business side and talking more about that. That's primarily on my channel that I enjoy talking about the most. But in terms of candle making, I do still like to, bring on topics onto this channel because I know that a lot of people are still finding my channel and that are brand new to candle making and hoping and wanting to turn it into a business one day. But I am going to end today's video right here, and I will see you in my next video.